Good evening, and welcome to tonight's Bruin Family Insights virtual discussion. Our discussion is brought to you by the UCLA Parent and Family Programs. And throughout this academic year, which starts tomorrow, we will explore a variety of themes relevant to our families. And we're going to use an interactive format with guest panelists, authorities at UCLA, as well as you, our live audience. And our goal is to inform parents and family members so that we could best support our students at UCLA. My name is Dan Lowe, and my wife and I are the parents of two Bruins. Our older son just graduated with a degree in economics, and our younger son is a third-year mechanical engineering major. And we also have the honor of serving as the co-chairs-elect of the UCLA Parents Council. Tonight's conversation is a topic relevant and important to each of us as family members. It's a question that we raise, and the question is my student safe? Understanding campus safety and security. We're going to include information about resources for us as families, as well as our student, and safety tips to help our student be proactive. This evening, we're honored to have with us 4 members of the UCLA community who are pivotal to campus safety efforts. Administrative Vice Chancellor Michael Beck, UCLA Police Chief Tony Lee, Director for UCLA Emergency Management Art Kirkland, and UCLA Police Captain Russell McKinney. Administrative Vice Chancellor Beck, it's such an honor to have you with us tonight. Let's begin with you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at UCLA?
Thanks, Dan. I've actually been with UCLA for about 18 months. Before that, I was the city manager in Pasadena, and I really refer to the administrative vice chancellor role as being the city manager of UCLA. The areas of responsibility I have include the police department, environmental health and safety, fire, all of the facilities on campus, IT, HR, all of the housing operations, events, transportation, and parking, other areas. So high administrative function across the organization.
Thank you, Michael. We're also delighted to have 2 top-level officials from our UC Police Department. And we have Chief Tony Lee, along with Captain Russell McKinney. Chief Lee and Captain McKinney, could you tell us a little bit about yourselves and your role at UCLA?
Well, certainly, Dan, thank you. It's certainly an honor and a privilege to be serving UCLA. My name is Tony Lee. I'm the police chief. I've been here for approximately 6 months now. And prior to that, I served for the city of Beverly Hills for 26 years. I left as a captain at that department, had a wonderful career over there. And I oversee the police services and campus security.
So thank you, Dan, for having us this evening. My name is Russell McKinney. I'm a captain with the UCLA Police Department. I currently oversee the Administrative Bureau, which is primarily all the 9 non-sworn positions. Been here since 1994, and prior to that, I was with UC Santa Barbara, starting there in '89 as a community service officer and police dispatcher.
Oh, thank you so much, Chief Lee and Captain McKinney. It's also a delight to have with us the Director for UCLA Emergency Management, Art. Art, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and the role that you play at UCLA?
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Our job in emergency management is to prepare for, respond to, and recover from anything that goes wrong on campus, anything outside of normal operations, basically. Been on campus for about 5 years and did the same job at Tulane University in New Orleans before that. And prior to that, I was at Georgia Tech, United States Military Academy.
All right. Thank you, Art. Let's go ahead and jump into some questions. Chief Lee, could you talk a little bit about the structure of UCPD and how the department works to ensure a secure environment for the whole UCLA community?
Well, certainly, Dan. So our department, we have a sworn of 64 and approximately 41 civilians. I also have about 100 student workers, 25 emergency medical technicians, and approximately 75 community service officers that we call CSOs. So there's about 200 in the police station. We'd be considered the largest of the 10 UC police departments. And I have 2 bureaus that are separated by operations and administration. Operations is essentially the uniformed services with patrol, motors, detectives, and administrative services. Right next to me here, Captain McKinney oversees essentially the budget, our community relations that we have, the emergency medical services that I mentioned, and also the community service officers.
If I could just add something, Dan, real quick. It's important to realize a lot of people look at the UCLA Police Department. We're just we're a regular police department like your municipal police departments or sheriff department. We've got statewide jurisdiction. So you won't see the UCLA Police Department officers just on the campus property. Pretty much anywhere the university owns or operates campus properties, we police those areas as well. So,
Dan, I just wanted to add that, so, before Russell jumped in here, that we have 7 geographic beats. We have high visible, police presence around there, including our bicycle team. And we'll also saturate areas with our plainclothes officers if we have specific areas that we need to target for like property crimes and such. So, yeah, we've got full police services. And thank you, Russell, for jumping in on that.
Boy, that's really reassuring for us to hear as parents and family members, just to know how the campus is secured. Art, in light of recent flooding caused by the hurricanes in both the Southeast and Texas and earthquakes in Mexico, what are the priorities and the preparations of the campus to ensure the safety and well-being of the student body if and when a natural disaster or any kind of disaster would affect the UCLA campus?
It's a really good question. It kind of gets to the heart of what we do pretty much every day. We are constantly looking at what hazards there are as they develop or as hazards get mitigated along the way. There's a huge, actually, committee of folks from across the campus that come together about once a quarter to look at natural hazards, man-made hazards, and technical hazards to determine what can we do to mitigate the hazard, to make it less hazardous, basically, to the students, staff, and faculty. And if we can't actually do away with the hazard altogether, how do we make the effects of the hazard less on our students? So examples of that range from long-term projects such as the retrofit of buildings after the Northridge earthquake that's still ongoing on some small parts of campus, to some changes we made to the emergency notification system as a result of things that happened last year. So it's a constantly iterative process where we look at what's happened in the world. We try to find out how does that affect us. We try to lessen the hazard as best we can, and then we build our response in case we can't absolutely avoid the hazard.
Thank you, Art. That was a great question submitted by Daniel when he RSVP'd for tonight's webinar. Abe also has another question, Art, that you might be able to respond to. Given the recent earthquake, including 3.6 in Westwood, what provisions does UCLA have in place during and after a major earthquake happening in the area? So, for example, is there an emergency contact mechanism in place as well for parents to locate or contact their kids in the event of something like this?
It's a good question, and it's a kind of a two-part question. We have really extensive preparations for taking care of our students, staff, and faculty in the event of an earthquake. The resident students, we have about 5 days supply of food and water that's set aside just for hurricane response. As far as communications go, we have probably, and I'm going to pat us on the back today, the best emergency notification system of any large university in the country. We tested it today. We regularly reach about 92,000 folks within 3 or 4 minutes. That's how we notify students of what's going on. There are multiple methods we get a hold of students. We do contact them through their email, through their text message. We try to get the word out to all of them that they can add additional emails and text messages, like for mom and dad, perhaps. We have AM radio. We take over the cable television stations on campus. We have a Twitter feed. All those are ways that we can get messages out. As far as locating students, that's still probably something that we're working the hardest on because we don't actually provide a method for the parents to contact back into the students. What we do have, though, is a website we call Brewing Safe Online, bso.ucla.edu, that always has the current condition of what's going on the campus. So If a parent was to log on to that today, it says campus is operating normally, everything is fine. And as long as you see that, that is a true statement. If something happens, say there was to be an earthquake, then we would change that to say, this is what's going on. There's an emergency on campus. This is what it is. And this is how to, or what you should be doing. On that page as well for parents is the current news feed of exactly what's happening on campus. It's the real ground truth of what's happening on campus. So we may not be able to facilitate you reaching out and contacting your student directly, but we will keep you informed as to what's going on with students on campus.
I would add just a little bit on that, Art, as it relates to food for any of the parents that might have students that are living in the dormitories. We generally produce about 35,000 meals a day. We have enough inventory to provide about 3 days worth of food in a complete fashion. And then if it's a more prolonged event, then we have a very large supply of other staples like beans and rice that we can continue to feed, assuming that we get no deliveries in an extended period of time. We have about 103,000 gallons of water that's actually stored on the top of the dormitory buildings that's used for food preparation and other purposes. And then we have literally thousands of bottles of water in the dormitory area. In the event of a major disaster, we do anticipate that we will be able to provide some limited food to the rest of the campus if they happen to be here during the day, but our primary focus on the food storage piece is actually for those that are living on campus.
Okay, thank you so much, Michael. So we have a viewer question, and the question is, can you describe the 3 most common safety concerns for the students where they're likely to need to interact with a police officer? So maybe either Chief Lee or Captain McKinney.
Sure, we'll take that one. Obviously, that's an individual perspective, but if I were to place myself in a student's shoes, for me, I think my biggest safety concern would be something being stolen. If you go to our website, the police website at police.ucla.edu, you can view what crimes occur on the campus proper, either through our UCR crime stats or our Clery stats. But for me as a student, I'd be most concerned with something being stolen. So for instance, if it starts with an I, iPhone, iPad, those are the things that typically walk away from their possession. So you've got to remind your students when they come to UCLA that even though this is an extremely safe environment and the campus is extremely safe, you've still got to have some situational awareness to be aware of your items. Don't leave them about, and just take caution not to leave them somewhere. So those would be the biggest concern. I think following theft, obviously escort services at night. If I was walking through the campus and it was dark, obviously safety in numbers is the philosophy we go by. So we offer a CSO escort program. We offer a van service, but that's an opportunity to get from point A to point B with another individual, so you don't feel concerned for your safety. But realistically, this is an extremely safe campus, and for most students, if you were to ask them how they feel about their personal safety, I think they would be very comforted. So.
Dan, I'd also like to add in there, as a new police chief, one of the messages I'd like to send out is really to try to get the students engaged with our Coffee with a Cop program. We're going to be really launching that, and there's going to be quite a bit of those. We're going to have some crime prevention tips in there, against personal property, safeguarding that, identity theft, and one of the big things that we'll probably repeat over and over during this segment is our active shooter. And we very much promote the run, hide, and fight concept out here. And we've got a wonderful supervisor in our threats management unit that actually conducts those lectures. And he can certainly tailor it to 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or an hour and 15 minutes. So I'd encourage all the students to make sure that they know the concept on that, should we have something like that, God forbid.
So that's a good point, Chief Lee. I mean, how do you get that message out about how to respond in an active shooter situation in terms of training and preparation?
So again, our message will be out there. If they look at our website, our contact number's there, We're going to be working with USAC, the Undergraduate Student Association, as well. We meet with them. I do have a advisory council called the Police Chiefs Advisory Council, so I'm reaching out to all the constituents, including the Senate committee, to see what we can do to make sure that the message is out there for training. They really need to, find the time to do that. I know that the students are going to be very busy. I know for a fact because my daughter graduated from UCLA, and she says that time was always of essence. But I encourage her to make sure that you put aside a little time to maybe really get engaged with any of these programs that the police department offers, and she did. So she was able to grasp the run, hide, and fight concept, and she said it was very helpful.
Well, that's great to hear. Yeah, I know that with the resources available, that it's very important for the students to be proactive and take advantage of them. And as a parent, I appreciate the fact that the UCLA PD is available during the family orientation, and just to know that these things are available for us. So Chief Lee, Terry submitted a question. She said, please describe the steps taken to keep students safe regarding shootings, terrorism attacks, and also earthquakes or natural disasters.
So again, Dan, I think we've mentioned about the active shooter. So, the programs are out there. And my message as a new chief is to try to, get the students and including faculty and staff engaged with that as much as possible, because everybody has an important role with that component. The terrorism attacks, we have a wonderful relationship with the FBI's Terrorism Task Force. We have an officer that's actually, a part of that partnership, and we share intelligence constantly with them for both domestic and international terrorism. So we are plugged in with our federal partners, and there's always a constant healthy exchange between the two.
Great. Here's another viewer question. If a female student feels she has been the victim of sexual assault, is this a matter for campus police or the Office of Student Life?
So that's actually a very, very good question, and one we take seriously. Any assaults on campus should be reported to the UCLA Police Department. Any crimes on campus should be reported to the UCLA Police Department. But when it comes to sexual assault, that's obviously a unique crime that could involve and will involve both the police department, Student 9, but more specifically our Title IX office. So whereas we as a police department can run our criminal investigation for any sexual assaults, we submit to the district attorney for filing. That's one option, but the students also have the option, as I mentioned, to report through Title IX, who can make administrative findings against an individual as well. And we want to also make sure that an individual has the appropriate care and counseling after the fact. So we have care advocates on campus that can help support any survivors of sexual assault. But it's a multidisciplinary approach that we take here at UCLA that I think is unique to a police department. You wouldn't see it normally in a municipal police department. So.
Thank you so much, Captain McKinney. Art, one question that Ellen submitted was, what work has been done to retrofit UCLA's buildings, especially the dorms, for a large earthquake? So I think a lot of our viewers and family members are concerned about the big one and the earthquakes affecting our buildings as well as our students.
It's a really good question, and it's on a lot of people's minds now, especially given the events in Mexico last week when folks were watching buildings falling on the news. A couple of things to keep in mind is all the buildings at UCLA that were rated as seismically fair or poor prior to or immediately after the Northridge earthquake have been upgraded. So there are only a very few structures on campus that are not rated as seismically good, and those tend to be small outbuildings that people don't habitate. So the short answer to that question is all of the dorms have been upgraded to be what's considered seismically good. They're not going to collapse in the event of any foreseeable earthquake that we could experience in the LA area. We may lose some veneer on the outside. We'll certainly have things falling on the inside in terms of things people put up high they shouldn't have. But the buildings themselves have all been set up in such a way and been retrofitted in such a way that they are secure in about 120% of the maximum earthquake we expect to get in this area as a result of anything.
All right, thank you, Art. So Michael, what types of training and or debrief are done following campus incidents to improve safety measures and or to prevent future incidents?
So after any major incident that occurs on campus, we actually do what's referred to as an after action report, which is the entities that were responsible for responding have the ability to review their actions, determine what went well, what could have been executed a little bit more effectively. And then we also look at what training activities could have been beneficial to help alleviate any potential negative outcomes that occurred as a result of the incident. And we do take those efforts seriously and are effective at reviewing. We also review actually what other campuses are. So even if you looked at the sort of civil unrest issue that occurred in Charlottesville at University of Virginia, we actually did look at their after action report and identified and then running it through our own system to see how prepared we are for that type of action that may occur on campus, make sure that our policies are up to date, our responses are clear, and ensure that our students can be remain safe during any of those types of incidents.
So Dan, if I might just add, a good example is our Bruin block party that we had, the first ever last Sunday. It was a very successful event, but we will be having a debriefing with everybody involved there, including our LAPD partners, to see what we can do to even enhance that and enhance security for that matter, and do a better job. Are there any security measures that we can add that could really, make the event even better? And we should have an after action report that should follow thereafter.
Sounds so good. Thank you, both Michael and Chief Lee. So here's a viewer question that Alma submitted. Is there a plan in place in case students need to evacuate campus? And if it is, do students know about it, and how do parents learn about this evacuation plan?
I think that was mine. The short answer is yes, there is a plan to evacuate the entire campus if it comes to that. The thing to keep in mind, though, is that we have a daytime population of around 90,000 people on campus, and it's a little 440-acre campus. So getting 90-some-odd thousand folks off of campus in something like an orderly manner is a fairly large undertaking. What we've done is we've divided the campus up into zones. There are about 8. Well, they're not about 8. There are exactly 8 zones on campus that students evacuate to. The way it typically works, and the students will get their first introduction to this, those that live up on the hill will do fire drills. We used to call them evacuation drills real soon. In the first couple of weeks they're here, and they'll learn where their building evacuation areas are. The building wardens for each of the residence halls and for every building on campus then knows from that building evacuation area where the regional evacuation area is. So if we had a large earthquake and we decided for whatever reason we needed to evacuate campus afterwards because we were going to be closed for a couple of days or whatever the reason might be, students would move from their building evacuation areas to their regional evacuation areas, and then we would evacuate the campus by evacuating one of those regions at a time. What we hope to do by doing that is control the flow of folks off campus so we don't end up with something that we saw across town a couple of years ago when California State LA evacuated their entire campus, and they ended up with a parking lot basically around the outside of campus because nobody could go anywhere. The students will be briefed on that from the residence hall side by their RAs and by the folks in housing hospitality services. On the academic side, that's a part of what they have to kind of adapt to, because the unique thing about being a student, you're in 5 or 6 different buildings a day. And so your evacuation plan is different based on which of those buildings are. If parents are interested in the details of that, they can certainly contact me direct, and I'll be more than happy to answer any specific questions they have. We don't have a program for formally notifying parents of that because it typically involves just the folks that are present on campus.
Art, can I ask you to clarify something too? So
Sure.
Not everything that occurs on UCLA is going to require an evacuation. Would you mind going over the shelter-in-place concept?
Yes, I can do that as well. In point of fact, most things that happen on campus we would shelter in place rather than evacuate. It's not a good place to put 92,000 folks when they leave campus. So Shelter in place typically is something when there is a hazard outside of the buildings, and it can be man-made, it can be natural. So if we had a severe windstorm, for example, we might ask students to shelter in place, which would basically mean they move to a safe place in the building, take shelter there until we tell them it's time to come out. That's really a much more common thing to happen than an evacuation. I generally have to imagine really hard to come up with when we would ever evacuate the entire campus. But shelter in place, we've done a time or two, and I'm sure we'll do it again.
Art, maybe you can spend a little bit of time talking about the Bruin alert system and how the parents might be able to get that same message so they would know whether or not we are evacuating individual building, the entire campus, or there might be some other emergency on campus that they may want to be aware of as it's actually happening.
I would gladly do that, as a matter of fact. Bruin Alert is our emergency notification system for students, staff, and faculty. It kind of goes back to a previous question. One of the things that came up as a result of an after action review of another incident is we needed to make that system more robust and more flexible. So one of the things we've done starting last September is we've enabled students to add additional contact numbers beyond their email and cell phone number. So they can log into Bruin Alert. They just go to bruinalert.ucla.edu and log into their account. They can add an extra email address, so it could be mom and dad's email address. They can add 2 extra text message numbers. Again, could be mom and dad's text message numbers. That's one way that the parents can get the information. What I tell folks on a real regular basis is the simplest thing to do is to log on, if you have access to a computer, is to log on to BSO online, bso.ucla.edu, because that will give you a real-time, this is the status of campus. If there is an emergency, this is what's going on, and this is what you should do. But there are a couple other ways as well. The simplest one, the one we've used the longest time, is parents can just go to their cell phone and they can text to the number 40404, just the phrase follow at UCLA Bruin Alert. And then every time we send out a Bruin Alert, they will get a text message with the text of whatever our Bruin Alert was that day. And then the final thing, we've been telling the students the last about 9 months now about our Brewing Safe App that works on the Apple and Android phones. Unfortunately, it doesn't work on Windows phones. Parents are free to download that as well. They can go to either one of those places, download, or the UCLA App Store for that matter, and download the Bruins with an S Safe app. And then anytime we send out an emergency alert, it shows up in the Bruin Safe app as well. So we've tried to get between adding parents to the Bruin Alert system proper, which the student has to do, the ability to send Twitter alerts to text messages, and the Bruin Safe app and Bruin Safe Online. We think we pretty well got a good suite of ways for parents to know what's going on.
The other advantage of the Bruin Safe Online or the app is that it includes instructions on what the individuals who are on campus should do in case of an major emergency. And there's particular instructions associated with fire, earthquake, active shooter. And there's also a component which is new, which I think is really exciting, which is called Friend Walk, which means if a student is in the library or somewhere on campus and they're going to be walking back to their home, their apartment, or to the dorm in the middle of the night, they can actually have a friend or a family member virtually walk with them back to their final destination. And if something, for some reason, they lost connection during that friend walk, the friend or the parent who's sort of walking with them can immediately contact UCLA PD via the app, which gives instructions of where they lost contact with the student. So it's a very effective tool that we just recently launched. So we're excited about that too.
Okay, those are a lot of great resources. So the Bruin Safe app, bsoonline.edu, having our kids add us to the bruinalert.ucla.edu. And then also, Art, could you reiterate that 40404?
Mm-hmm. Sure. One correction along the way, though. The website is just bso.ucla.edu. And the text messaging through Twitter, the number is 40404. So you text to that number, and what you text is follow, the word follow, space, ampersand, at UCLA Bruin Alert. All one word.
Art, is that the @ sign or AT?
The @ sign, ampersand sign.
Follow at UCLA
Bruin Alert.
Bruin Alert. Okay.
Period. Yep.
Perfect. So actually, many of our parents had questions about the Bruin Alert. Sally and Indra, very much interested in how they could sign up for that. Captain McKinney, would you say, what would you say are some of the most common crimes in the Westwood area? You mentioned a few in particular, but things that you see happening time and time again, and maybe included in that is we realize that UCLA is an open campus, and that there are some who are homeless, and sometimes they'll either wander into campus or go up to Ackerman or be outside of Trader Joe's. What are some of the ways that UCLA protects our students in these situations?
Sure. I mentioned earlier that UCLA is a safe campus. Most of our crimes are property crimes. So again, remind your students not to leave things around. As far as the homeless question, we're a little unique from many colleges and universities. I know we've got another university in Southern California that we don't want to talk about, but we're unique because we are a public university, which means it's open to the general public. And just because somebody may be homeless doesn't make it illegal to come onto campus. They still have access to the restaurants here, some of the libraries. I mean, it is an open campus. Having said that, if somebody comes onto campus, and that would apply to somebody who may be homeless or somebody who may be a student or somebody who may be staff, faculty, guest, if you do something that's causing a disturbance, then the police department is obviously going to respond and take action. Very rare for that to occur on campus, but it is an open campus, and we understand that. We also have students that are homeless right now. I mean, that's the unfortunate circumstance. So I mean, we don't just target homeless people, we target criminal activity. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, definitely. So another related question about crime is, Amam K writes, I have concerns about the high rate of sexual assault on campuses. What is UCLA doing to ensure the safety of our students?
So I'll jump onto that one. We talked earlier about reporting incidents. The police department obviously can't be everywhere all the time. I mean, there are things that unfortunately do occur on campus. And most of it is just, I don't want to say common sense approaches, but it's really be aware of your surroundings. Surround yourself with good people. If something does happen to you in the ways of a sexual assault, we definitely want that to be reported to the police department so we can take appropriate, criminal investigation matters into our hands, or report it up, as I mentioned earlier, to Title IX. But UCLA, as a research institution, as an institution of higher education, is constantly educating people. We're trying to change the culture that sexual assault is not okay, that it's not right. And so it's just, bringing this topic up, talking about it, reporting crimes if and when they were to occur. But I know there's a lot of programs that are provided to the students during the orientation, during their time up at the residence halls when they get to know, their staff of those locations. But we take this matter very seriously. And again, it's being aware of your surroundings, which is going to protect you most.
Dan, and I have to tell you, as a parent that had a UCLA graduate here, I've had constant conversations with my daughter, and I told her, use good common sense. There's nothing for a substitute for common sense. Use good judgment, and drinking, parties, staying out late at night, that sometimes could lead to bad things. And she listened to some of the advice that I gave her, and she says that she never had any issues with that. So I can't tell you, as a parent, just use good common sense. So parents have a very important role in this.
Yeah, that's a great reminder for moms and dads to communicate with our sons and daughters how to be safe. It's great.
And I'd say, Dan, another thing that parents can do is sort of encourage their friends, their students, their children to actually make sure that when they go out, that they have friends that are looking after each other, because it's not uncommon, just generally, not specifically referring to UCLA, but generally a rape occurs from somebody that the individual knows. And so it's important that you have friends that are looking after you as an individual, and you're looking after your other friends, and that's both for male and female, to make sure that individuals don't end up in a situation which could put them in a compromising position in the future. And we also want to recognize the fact that it's not, it's not the woman's fault, right? This is an issue in which the aggressor is responsible for the action, not the victim or the survivor in this case. And so it's important not just to talk to your daughters about this issue, it's important to talk to your sons about this issue. It's also important to recognize the fact that that boys or men are victims of sexual assault. Women could be aggressor on another woman. It's just important to have a discussion in general, and we shouldn't be looking stereotypically just at who we normally look at as a potential victim in this case.
Okay, thank you, Michael. So this question is related to our discussion about safety and exercising good wisdom and judgment. Maria has a question about a topic that's come up earlier about security escorts. Are there security escorts available to escort students home, dorm, or even nearby off-campus apartments late at night from the gym or maybe a study session or other activities? And she knows that my daughter will be working as a supervisor at the on-campus gym facility, and frequently her shifts end or start in the late night or early morning hours. So maybe some of the particulars of how someone could secure an escort to safely bring them home.
Sure, I'll address that issue. As the chief mentioned earlier, we run a community service officer program, and part of the services that program offers is the escort program. It operates 365 days a year from dusk until 1 o'clock, and on Thursdays they're actually from dusk until 2 o'clock. So we do have that escort program, and they're probably going to be bombarded this first week about the escort program phone number, but it's easy to remember. It's just from a campus phone, dial 4-WALK or 794-WALK, and one of our CSOs will be dispatched out to their location where they can escort them anywhere from the campus proper. We go over to the west side, all the way to Veteran, all the way down to Wilshire, Sunset, and Hillgard. So it's the larger community of the university. And we also offer a van service, which operates pretty much those same times, not so much on the weekends, but it's a convenient method for people to get an escort from point A to point B. And then within the next few months, we'll be offering a new application, which is Ride Safes, where people can actually utilize their phones to reach out and request one of the van services. And who was it who submitted this question?
This is Maria.
Maria? Well, Maria, if you're listening, our CSO program is also hiring. So if your daughter would like to become a CSO in the future, we're hiring. And again, this is an excellent opportunity to talk about our ambulance on campus. We also offer a basic life support ambulance that's operated 365 days a year by student employees within the UCLA Police Department. Most of them are pre-med students, so we provide that service also on campus, and we also hire for those positions. So,
I wanted to throw in one other little piece to that is the Brewing Safe App that we talked about earlier also has a button specifically for calling CSO. So if you forget the number for whatever reason, you press our campus escort button and it'll call straight to there. Once PD has the app to call the vans, we'll add that to the Bruin Safe app as well.
I think everyone needs to download that app. Sounds really good, very useful. Michael, are there any safety resources parents and family members might be surprised to learn about that are available to our students?
We've actually been spending a fair amount of time talking about, I think, the most important one, which is the Brewing Safe app. It's new, and it has a wealth of resources. Other things that exist on campus include sort of blue light phones. So these are emergency phones that exist throughout the campus, that if somebody needs emergency, whether it's for medical or crime-related issues, or just frightened, if they hit the yellow button on these poles, it'll go right to the police dispatch. The police will know exactly where the individual is. It automatically opens up a microphone so that they can hear what's going on. They don't have to worry about calling. They can just simply say nothing, and a police officer will still show up to that blue light phone. So I think those are probably the other thing I was going to mention was the ambulance service, which Russell already did a great job of promoting. And there's just a sort of wealth of available resources on campus.
Oh, that's so good to know. Here's a viewer question from Alex. Thanks for watching, Alex. Appreciate that. What safety measures are taken for large events on campus? Do student groups work directly with UCPD or the fire marshal to ensure the safety of attendees? For example, the Beat SC bonfire.
So I'll answer that with a yes, and I can stop there, but I'll elaborate a little more. The police department, we do have a sergeant who's assigned to the special events unit, and his job in its entirely is to plan special events throughout the UCLA campus. So obviously a large world-famous university ranked #1, I believe, within the public universities now, but we've got people coming onto campus from all over the world. That includes dignitaries, you've got concerts, you've got sporting events. Any special event that you could imagine would be planned here at UCPD and UCLA proper. And obviously we work closely with the fire marshal to make sure that these events are safe. Also within that office, the special events sergeant, he works at a desk beside the threat assessment unit. So they're kind of going back and forth to determine if there are any threats associated with an event. So if we have to staff up a little bit more, but they work closely with the fire department, student groups, the events office, special events and protocol. But there's many entities on campus that get together to make sure that we have safe events on campus.
Dan, we should also mention that a special mention really is the Undie Run, our very famous Undie Run that we do a few times a year. And our partners over at LAPD have been very, very helpful. And I can't tell you enough, as a police chief, having a very strong uniform presence out there on a major event such as the Undie Run, I believe the students feel very safe knowing that every corner has got a uniformed police officer. So the feeling of security is indispensable in the eyes of a student, and certainly as a parent too.
Yeah, thank you, Chief Lee and Captain McKinney. Our environment, health, and safety's slogan is changing the safety culture. What does this mean, and how does the environment, health, and safety live this mission? How does emergency management fit into this?
Well, emergency management, or EH&S, or environmental health and safety, is my home department. So they're the next level up from me. And that's pretty typical on college campuses. Emergency management either belongs to the police department or it belongs to EH&S. The biggest thing in EH&S, the entire concept of changing the safety culture, is for EH&S as a department to be viewed as a partner to the researchers and to the students and to the faculties, to show them not that you can't do something because it's not safe, but how to do the things they want to do safely, and how to make that sort of second nature as you're designing experiments, or you're designing courses, or you're designing a bonfire, for that matter. And it's the idea of taking safety and not tacking on at the end of something, but for it to be there as an integral part of the entire process. And EHS does that, and emergency management does that, by getting out and being among folks as much as possible. So rather than sitting in an office somewhere and just making sure the regulations get followed, which is kind of the everybody's view of what EH&S does, we actually get out, we visit labs, we respond to questions, we try to be a resource for researchers and faculty and students, rather than being the cop. Not that there's anything against being a cop, but being a safety cop is sometimes the way EH&S is viewed. For emergency management is very much a part of the safety culture, because again, the idea is to recognize all hazards, whether they're man-made or technical or natural, and trying to find ways to mitigate the damage those hazards can do. EH&S does very much the same thing, mostly concentrated on the laboratory and the day-to-day work environment. One thing that kind of got left out along the way, we do have, as part of EH&S, we do have a fire department on campus. They're mostly fire marshals, and so mostly inspections and those kind of things, but we do have a small pumper that they live for putting out fires when they can find them. And they're on campus every day from 6 in the morning until midnight, Mondays through Fridays. So they're also an integral part of running around and making sure that the campus keeps their fire safety hat on.
Oh, thank you so much, Art. You know, as you were describing some of those things, I kind of thought as a parent, you know, if we find ourselves on campus and wanted to visit the UC Police Department or your office, Environment, Health, and Safety, where would we find your offices on campus?
I can answer that first, Dan. Our police station is at 601 Westwood Plaza, just north of the Ronald Reagan Medical Center. And I'd also encourage some of our students, if they're really curious to find out what a police officer does day in and day out, to come on a ride along for a few hours so they can see through the lens of a police officer what we do and the types of situations that officers come across. There's going to be an appreciation for the type of work that our hardworking men and women do in law enforcement.
Yeah, the Environmental Health and Safety Office and my office are slightly separate. Environmental Health and Safety is in the Strathmore building, so that's on the corner of Strathmore and Westwood. And they're always happy to have visitors. They're currently hiring as well for student workers. My office is 731 Charles E. Young, so I'm literally right behind the police station. I'm in the facilities management building. And we run several education programs for students throughout every quarter. We do a thing called Community Emergency Response Team Training. It's a 24-hour course that we tell students and staff and faculty, it's not about necessarily helping us on campus in the event of an emergency, but being prepared when you go back home. We run that every academic quarter. I think our class for the fall is already full. So we'll be waiting on opening that up again in the springtime to get more students in to see what we do on a day-to-day basis as well.
Okay, thank you very much. It's great to have the knowledge of where you guys are located, and also to have that invitation to have a ride along with the UCPD and to appreciate through their eyes some of the opportunities and challenges that they face. So police community relations are at the forefront of today's national landscape. With cell phones, we know how that looks, and there's all sorts of emotions related to this. What does the jurisdiction look like for UCPD in the surrounding community, and how does UCPD work to address and strengthen these relationships in the UCLA community? Chief Lee, do you have some?
I do, Dan, and I think that's kind of a two-part question, internally and externally for the police department. I can't tell you that our very existence is the great relations we have with the community. And as I mentioned before, we're trying to really push out a lot of community relations effort with the Coffee with a Cop, our presentations on active shooter, anything to do with crime prevention, and also our brand new police advisory council that the administrative vice chancellor and I started a few months ago. It's been very successful. We get an opportunity to hear from many of the constituents, like student organizations, or association groups, and members of the faculty too, and folks from Westwood, to see what we can do to service the community much better. And it's great to hear some of the input that they have and to move forward. Also from an external level too is our relationship with the surrounding police departments here, with Beverly Hills, Culver City, Santa Monica, the Sheriff's Department, and of course our neighboring partners right here at LAPD. We have a big an active shooter scenario presentation that training exercise that we're doing first of the year with all the police departments, so we can better coordinate and have kind of a unified front in some of the things that we've learned from the past. So, and the relationships we have with our federal partners, as I mentioned, with the FBI and the robust intelligence sharing. So all those things come into play to make us successful in protecting the campus much better.
Thank you very much, Chief Lee. Alex has a really good question. He's one of our viewers and just submitted this. For students living in the fraternity or sorority houses and or an off-campus apartment, if a parent or student has a safety concern, for example, a blocked fire exit, would they report that on campus or with the city?
So I think the best way to answer that is it depends. Obviously, if you have an emergency, you want to utilize 911. That call may go into UCPD, it may go to LAPD, it may be routed to CHP. Regardless, it's going to get routed to the appropriate police agency. If you're talking about something that is not necessarily emergency, i.e. a blocked fire door, you probably want to route that through the appropriate owners of the apartment complex. UCLA does own numerous properties on the west side of campus, so that would be reported directly to housing, or you could make the report to UCPD and we would notify the appropriate people. But again, when it comes to reporting a crime or an emergency, you want to fall back on reporting that via 911.
Thank you very much, Captain McKinney. So North Korea is in the news quite a bit, just about every other day. And Isabel is wondering, in the event of a nuclear missile attack from North Korea, do you have a way to warn students and parents? And would students and faculty have access to some sort of shelter?
Believe it or not, I've gotten that question about 8 times this summer, or a similar version of that question. And it's not as far off as it seems. You're right. We look at all possible hazards, and that's definitely a possible hazard. And here's what we've come up with. The first answer in terms of notification, assuming that we're talking North Korea, assuming the North Koreans launched a missile in the general vicinity of Los Angeles, the total time from takeoff to landing is about 20 minutes. If we got notified by the National Command Authority or some way inside of that, then we would notify just like for any other emergency. We would send out a Bruin alert to every channel we've got. The good news is we're really good at that. We send out Bruin alerts faster. We send out alerts probably faster than just about anybody else. Basically because we streamline the system, we exercise it real regularly. So that would go out. Again, if you're registered in the system as a parent, you would get the same notice we would, or the students would. But our primary concern is always our on-campus folks. The other thing is we actually have looked at what North Korea could do if they landed a missile somewhere in Los Angeles. And what we've determined is that given the likely places they are going to hit, unless Kim Jong-un is a closet USC fan, we don't think UCLA is a likely target. And the targets that are out there are generally would create a lot of pain for our folks, but the possibility of damage from the actual strike is relatively low. Downtown LA, the airport, LA Air Force Base are all far enough away that the biggest thing Korea owns would not directly affect the UCLA campus, either in terms of the initial explosion or the fallout after the explosion. Given that, we would give the students the instruction to shelter in place. So they would move to interior corridors, interior rooms of buildings, and stay there until they were told to come out. Not the most satisfactory answer in the world, but that is where our analysis has led us right this second. Hopefully it helps.
Yeah, it's very helpful, Art. Thank you very much. So let's go ahead and begin our final descent together as a group, thinking about safety and security at UCLA and finding reassurance about the protection of our students. If you were to offer, one final takeaway from our discussion tonight that you would pass along to family members, what would that be? If you want them to remember one thing. And let's go ahead and start with Administrative Vice Chancellor Beck.
Thanks, Dan. One thing is I'm going to cheat and I'm going to give you 2, is to be prepared and be aware. Be aware of your surroundings and think about what you would do in case of an emergency. Download the Brewing Safe App, review the analysis and information that we have in that so you can be prepared.
Thank you. How about Chief Lee?
So Dan, I've got a laundry list, but I know I'll stick with just one. And that is, I know that people have heard this cliche over and over, but really, if you see something, say something. Give us a call.
You took mine. I was going to say the exact same thing. I mean, frequently people may be the victim of crime, regardless of how petty it may seem. We really need to have anything and everything reported to the police department. So I agree with the chief. If you see something, do say something.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chief Lee and Captain McKinney. It's a good way to reinforce that message. See something, say something. And then Art?
Actually, it's kind of quite simple. Is for students in particular, as they go into different places on campus, take a look around, take a minute to kind of take what Michael said, look at your surroundings, think about what you would do if, and it can be any if. It can be if there's an earthquake, if there's a fire, if there's an active shooter on campus, what would I do from this location now? Just having thought about it in advance can be really, really helpful in the event that something does actually go wrong. You don't have to worry about it, you don't have to lose sleep, but just thinking through what would I do from here if is a really good step for everybody to take every time they go anywhere.
Thank you, Art. You know, one very quick follow-up. The question came up is, does the escort service work in Westwood itself, or is it limited to campus?
So again, if you think of the campus proper as being the 419 acres of UCLA, we do expand beyond that, the escort service. So we actually go all the way down to Wilshire. We go all the way over west to Veteran. We go east to Hillgard, and we go north to Sunset. So it's actually a larger footprint than just the campus proper, and it's a great service to utilize. So.
All right, thank you so much, Captain McKinney. Well, it's been a great evening. I appreciate each of you being a part of our webinar, thinking about safety and security for our students as well as our families, our staff, our faculty, and everyone at UCLA. So Administrative Vice Chancellor Beck, Chief Lee, Captain McKinney, and Art, we appreciate your leadership on campus. Thank you for spending the hour with us and sharing with us out of your own experience, as well as learning about the resources that are available to us as students. So we want to thank our viewers for joining us, for being a part of our discussion, for submitting your questions when you registered earlier or even online as we have this live YouTube broadcast. In just a little bit, this video will be uploaded on our website, parents.ucla.edu, our website for parent and family programs. And, you know, the good reminder, the big takeaway here is to be vigilant, to be thoughtful, to be safe, and to be proactive in thinking about the next step, and to avail ourselves of the resources available. So Brewing Safe app, be sure to download that for our phones and our tablets. It's a good resource to have. And it's good to know that the Departments of Environment, Health, and Safety, as well as our Police Department and the Office of our Administrative Vice Chancellor, are accessible to each of us. If you submitted a question that wasn't answered, our staff will answer those questions for you shortly. They'll correspond to you personally and get to that answer. We'd like to invite you to join us for our next webinar, which is Keeping Up with Bruin Traditions. Keeping Up with Bruin Traditions. And that's going to be Monday, October 16th at 7 p.m. October 16th at 7 p.m. And that is just in time for our Bruin Family Weekend, October 20th to 22nd. And you want to be sure to make that a part of your fall calendar. It's one of the best events that UCLA puts on all year. And so we look forward to it every fall. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We want to wish you a wonderful evening, and go Bruins. Thank you very much. Good night.